All right, lesson 13, advanced animation techniques. All right, so like I said, there's a lot of things that are going to be in this chapter that could be lessons all by themselves. And what I'll probably do is when we come back, or even after we finish this main thing, I'll do a couple of short little tips to show you how these things can all come together into a fun project. And then we'll be done with all the book learning and just start doing cool, fun stuff as we make it up. All right, so first part of this lesson, I'm going to go to my lesson 13 folder. There are some assets in there. Let's start with just importing the flowers.mov. Click open. And let's create a new composition using this footage. So I'm going to drag this down to the new composition icon in the project panel to create a composition. Now, first of all, I'm just going to show you this footage. Let's watch what it's doing. It's kind of moving around. We got some bouncing, some wind blowing, stuff like that. And what the point of this piece of footage is, we are going to stabilize the motion of this shot so it doesn't move at all. So first thing we can do is rely on an effect, and it's called the stabilize. Warp stabilizer. Okay, so if we drop that down on there, where we've got this analyzing thing going on again. Should go pretty quick. But there are a couple of different types of stabilizing you can do. You can do stabilizing based on position, so as things move up, down, left, and right, you can make it lock and become more stable based on position. There's also rotation, and so because as someone holds a camera, they might turn their hands sideways a little bit. So you've got, and then there's also scale stabilization. So if they are like leaning forward and backward, like maybe if the wind is blowing them forward and backward a little bit, that'll change the size that the objects appear on the screen. So there are several different parameters that you can stabilize. So the default settings of this are the result, they want smooth motion. We're using this subspace warp, a smoothness of 50%, stabilize, crop, auto scale, that's all of those settings I was telling you about. And the auto scale we've got set to 102.8%. These are just the default settings. So let me just do a RAM preview of this and let's see how we feel about it. All right, how does that look to you? What the smooth motion does is it embraces the general motion of the screen, but it takes the jerky movement out. Let me duplicate this layer. Take off the effect of the top layer. Let's compare. So let's look at the previous. Okay, so there's little bumps here. So while the bulk of the screen goes up and down still in the stabilized footage, it's trying to take away some of those jumps, which it does. See through that part? It stayed pretty still. So let's mess with this effect and see what we can do to it. If we want to stabilize it even more, then we can do, well, this auto scale is 102. Our maximum scale is 150, so there's plenty there. We can change some additional scale, like some post scaling, 2 R's. See, what stabilizers have to do is, if something moves this way, then to make it look like it stays in the same place, it needs to move it in the opposite direction, which would show some black space off to the side. So what you have to do is it does like a pre-scale so that it can move it this way to compensate and then move it that way to compensate. But the effect is doing all that for me right now. Let's go to no motion. See if we can make this absolutely locked down. Oh. So what we're going to try and do now is compensate for all motion and have it not move at all, make it look like it was shot on a tripod. See how much that had to scale it up? Okay, now let me do a RAM preview. Pretty locked down, right? So those are the two different methods of using the warp stabilizer visual effect to stabilize your footage. Really similar to what we kind of did in the Premiere class last semester. All right, so we can do stabilize only and see what that looks like. See that black stuff? See how it exposed that? It's like this crazy thing. All right, so there's the warp stabilizer for you. You pick what you want best for you. Stabilize and synthesize edges. Let's see what that does. That's probably going to take some processing time. Yeah, that's going to take a bit. All right, so let's move on to a second method for stabilizing motion. More of a manual method. This is where double clicking on a layer to bring up the layer panel, this is where we're going to start using that a little bit more heavily. So here I am, just so you guys know, this is the raw shot down, no effects, nothing on it yet. Okay, so let's double click on this and that'll bring up this playhead at the bottom. The layer panel shares space with the composition panel. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go up to my window. I'm not saving this because this is just a throwaway project. I don't need to save this. And I'm going to go to my tracker, and that'll bring my tracker up right here. And there are several different types of trackers. For this one, all I'm going to do is track motion. So in my tracker panel, if I click track motion, that'll bring up this little square with a square inside it and a little anchor point. These two squares mean a couple of things. One is inside the inside square, that's what I'm going to try and follow. The outside square is my look ahead. So if there's a lot of motion, if from one frame to the next it's traveling farther than this square goes, then this is my look ahead to try and look ahead to the next frame to try and find where that is. The thing I'm going to track in this shot is this bud, because even though there's wind blowing in the shot, that bud doesn't move a whole lot. So I'm going to stabilize the shot around this bud. All right, so right there, I want this box to be pretty centered up over that bud. And then the look ahead, I'm just going to kind of have it be right here. Now, to track the motion, there are two different ways you can do it. You have to analyze the motion, and the analyze buttons are down here. Analyze, you can play it forward and just let it play the footage and analyze all the frames, or you can go one frame at a time. So as a hope, you cross your fingers and you hit the play forward and you hope that that little box stays over that bud through the whole spot, or through the whole shot. So I'm going to try it. Hopefully it works. Push play. It's doing pretty good. Locked up. Nice and strong. Okay, that was good, right? So now if I click Stabilize Motion, then what it'll do, oh, you know what? I did that wrong. I tracked the motion. I should have stabilized the motion. So let's do it again. There. I can do this backward because my playhead is at the end now. So I'm going to do the Analyze Backward. Does the same thing, only it does it in reverse. So why would you want to analyze backward? Let's pretend that the best frame with the most clear shot of your point that you're tracking is right in the middle of the shot. Well, you would set your tracker point there, and then you would have to analyze forward and then backward from that point. Okay, so that's why you can analyze forward and backward. Motion target is the flower. That's the only thing we're stabilizing this layer. So now if I click Apply on the tracker panel, I want to apply it to the X and the Y. Click OK. And what that does is create a whole bunch of all these position keyframes that move it in the opposite direction that the tracker is moving, and it perfectly stabilizes that bud right in its spot. But look what's happening. As it's doing the opposite motion, I'm seeing black on the sides. So I have to scale it, make it big enough so that you never see black. Okay? So that's the way we used to have to do it. And that's actually the way we still have to do it when the warp stabilizer produces jello. We produced some jello last semester, huh? In the video editing. All right. Okay, so that's the first part of the advanced animation techniques. I'm going to just clear everything out of this project. Hit Command I. In that same project, or in that same folder, assets folder, we've got a metronome.mov. Let's make a new composition from the metronome.mov. Okay, so in this shot what we're going to do is we're going to motion track the metronome as it moves back and forth, and then we're going to put a graphic and have a graphic follow it. So let's start by tracking this. I'm going to double click on the footage so that I get the layer panel to show. And then what I'm going to do is, this time I'm tracking motion, I'm not stabilizing motion. I jumped the gun before. Let's do track motion. Now I want to track the motion of the metronome clicking back and forth. So let's just, I'm going to expand that inner, I like to expand the inner box and then collapse it again so that I get this nice big area to look at, because it's going, when I drag it around, it expands the pixels that are inside the inner box so that I can see them better. Then I'm going to place this right over here, and I want to find the pixels that create the most contrast possible. And that aren't really going to change. So inside that inside box, I want just that. Actually, right here is what I want, because I want it to be right on there. Okay. Now there are a couple times during this shot where that metronome gets going back and forth pretty quick. So let me show you what that look ahead, having that look ahead be a little bit bigger can do for you. The smaller you can do this, the more precise your track is going to be, but if there's a lot of motion, watch what happens. So if I go forward one frame at a time, the tracker is staying on the end of that metronome pretty good, right? So if I hit play, watch what happens. As that metronome moves faster, it started out right here, but then as the shot went along, it drifted down and it followed in between those two. Okay, so it started out up here and then it moved down there. I don't like that, so I'm going to undo it. So what I'm going to do now, hopefully this will work, is I'm going to expand this box just a little bit so I can see more of the pixels. And I'm going to expand the look ahead. There's a lot of horizontal movement, so I'm going to have it look more horizontally than vertically. And hopefully I'll get a better track out of it. So I'm going to hit the Analyze Forward button in the tracker panel. It's kind of doing the same thing. Ooh, totally lost it there. Did you see that? Right here, it didn't even follow it. Woo! Okay, not good. Let me try again. Let's just get rid of this tracker altogether. I'm not liking it. So I'm going to track motion. Click track motion again. Let's start over. Let's try just tracking the entire head. See if that'll be better. Hit Analyze Forward. See how much slower it's going now? It's looking at a lot more pixels. But that little plus sign right in the middle, this box is staying in a better spot. Looks like it's following the motion a little bit better. All right, so with that motion tracked, I'm going to go back to my composition panel. I need to create a layer for that position to follow. All right, or a layer with which to follow that motion. Anyway, just for giggles, I'm going to make a star, a little star shape, right here, right in the middle of my frame. Okay. Now, I'm going to go to frame 1 of my timeline panel and double click on the metronome movie again. And in the tracker panel, I need to tell it that the target, edit target, I want it to be this shape layer that I just created. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the position of every frame that that tracker is following and it's going to put it on the shape layer. So if I click Apply, Apply Dimensions X and Y, yes, click OK. Hopefully, cross your fingers, that star is going to follow that metronome back and forth. Pretty cool? Now let's pretend you did that. If any of you were, I'm going to just delete that. Let's make a new shape. I know what's going to happen, but I'm going to let it. Say I make my shape. I want that star to follow this tracker. Tracker 2. Let's see. It's not letting me edit the target anymore. All right, just for practice, let's delete those trackers. Let's track the motion again. Track motion. Put that over the metronome. Hit play, track it. Sorry, it's boring. It's like watching trackers track. All right, that's what you should say now whenever you say something is boring. It's like instead of watching paint dry, it's just watching trackers track. All right, so edit target. I'm going to have this be my shape layer. Click OK. Apply that tracker. Click OK. Now watch what's happening. It's following it, but it's off to the side. What happened? If this happens to you, don't worry. Let me go to the shape layer and hit U to uncover all the keyframes. The position is based on an anchor point that's off to the side of the star. If this happens to you, all you need to do is change the anchor point values, go to A for anchor point, and then change those values until the star is resting on the metronome. Problem solved. Now it'll follow. All right, good times, right? Any questions about that? Motion tracker is one of those things that, I don't know why. I had to do it a whole bunch before I got it. Started really understanding it. But then once you figure it out, it can be a lot of fun. All right, so I'm going to start this project over. Next topic, we're going to do some warp tool, time warp. All right. There's no this video has alpha, but there's nothing see-through on it, so I'm going to ignore it. Click OK. All right. Let's make a new composition using this footage. Drag that down to the new composition. Now what we're going to do is do some bullet time. So these people are all walking toward us. They're like, hey, we're cool. We're too cool for this shot. I don't know why this is playing back so bad. All right. Okay. Normal walking shot. Nothing really interesting about that, right? But what happens when we matrixify it and turn it, make it so this guy turns, he's like, yeah, and then they go slow motion walk, and then they speed back up again. That's what we're going to do. So, effects and presets, tab, panel. Let's type in time. We're going to do this time warp. Right there. So, by default, what the time warp plugin will do is it will play your footage back at half the speed. So check this out. Now it's a slow motion shot going at half the speed. But I want them to start out walking at normal speed, and then I want to slow them down and then have them speed back up. So let's add some keyframes. All this stuff, you can really mess with this, but the only thing I'm interested in right now is the speed. So I'm going to turn the speed up to 100. That's 100% speed. That's normal speed. So, okay, walking normal speed. Right there, on about his second step, I want to do a keyframe, but then I want over the next second, maybe, okay, so that was 112. Maybe over the next 1 second, that would put us at 212. I want it to slow down to like 25%, like 1/4 speed, super slow. So they walk really, really slow for a second, and then I'm going to add another keyframe here, but I need to duplicate a keyframe. How do I look at my keyframes? U. So all it's going to show me is my speed keyframe. So starting at 100%, slowing down to 25%. Now at 312, I'm going to copy this 25% keyframe, paste it, and then over the next second I want it to go ramp back up to 100%. See, now watch what happens. He starts walking, they all slow down, epic, speed back up. You can make it more extreme if you want to. Alright. Let's look at the graph editor for that, see what's going on here. If I select any one of those keyframes or select speed in the properties column down here and then select the graph editor, watch what's happening. It's an immediate begin to slow down, immediately slow, and then immediately it starts to speed up. So guess what I want to do? Add easing, right? So I'm going to just select speed. That'll select all these keyframes as represented in the speed graph here. And I'm going to hold down the function key and hit F9. And that'll add easing. So now if I want to, I could drag these closer together, or yeah, it's all a matter of how you want it to time out. Slow-mo walk, and then speed back up. Let's watch it. All right, so that's the basics of the time warp. You can go in and tell it to like super sample frames so that it can. What it does is it tries to say, oh, you're playing me at 25% the speed. That means I really only need 1 in every 4 frames. So what it does is it tries to analyze in between frames and create time warping. So that's how you can simulate some bullet time. If you did shoot this at a higher frame rate, then if you put like something that was shot at 120 frames per second on a 24 frames per second timeline, then it gives you, then you have all the frames you need to slow it down to 1/4 without it having to do any magic, any calculating, interframe calculating. Okay, that was pretty fun, right?
I always think of Phil Collins' music when it slows down.
All right, let's start this project over. Import a new file. This time we're going to do, let's do multi-point tracking. So let's do this multipoint tracking.mov and the major spoilers.mov. Let's open both of those, but create a new composition using the multipoint tracking.mov. Then bring the major spoilers down and just put it on the timeline right there. Okay. All right, so major spoilers is covering everything, but what we're going to do is use motion tracking to put it right on the corners of this screen to replace the screen. Previously, we drew a mask and then did a corner pin, but that was on a static shot that wasn't moving. This one is moving around. Okay, so we need the replacement screen to follow the footage screen. All right, so to motion track this, once again, we need to double click on the multipoint tracking.mov layer, and that brings up our layer panel. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to track motion, but under the tracking type, we need to add rotation to it, but also scale. Just kidding. I wish I could undo my voice. Undo that. What we need to do is we need to under track type, do perspective corner pin, and that will give us 4 points. So as one might guess, we need to track the 4 corners of this computer screen. So we want to put, oops, we want to put points on each one of those corners. Now, cross your fingers. Let's analyze forward, see if those follow. It's not a complex motion, so I'm not surprised that that was pretty easy. Although I started in the middle of this shot, so I need to go back earlier and do an analyze in reverse or analyze backward to get the whole shot. Okay, perfect. All right, now what we need to do is under the edit target, we need to apply those 4 points to the corners of the major spoilers animation. So under edit target, we want to make sure that major spoilers.mov is selected. Click OK. Then when we click apply, hopefully major spoilers, if I turn it back on, now has the corner pin effect on it, and it's going to follow that computer screen. And just to take it one step farther, see how this edge is kind of showing on the edge of the screen there? I might just take the scale and, nope, wrong layer. I need the major spoilers. Oh yeah, sorry, transform, major spoilers, scale. Just make it a little bit bigger. And then additionally, I would add a fast blur, because now this is this super crisp screen, but it's on, you know, not as crisp footage. So I'll just add like 1 pixel of blur to that so that it's not perfectly crisp, but still crisp enough. And check out those corner pins. It's following it. Yay. Okay, good times on the motion tracking.
So then technically if you use the camera view, you could zoom into that and go into a new video.
Yeah, yeah, you could in theory now, if you had the camera going in close enough on the screen, you would just have it, once it filled the screen, you would suspend the motion tracking and let it stay still. All right. Okay, that was fun also. Mocha tracking, we should probably just do that as its own lesson sometime. Last thing, I'm going to start a new screen capture for this. We're going to do the particle generators. So